Hello folks, we are back again with another 40k rant. We've had a very interesting conversation over the past few days with a certain individual by the name of E-Man G. You will know him as the young man who's being sued by Games Workshop. That came up last week. I did a video on it last week, and he was good enough to reach out to me over email, and we had a rather lovely discussion about just what is going on with this case and what's happening over there. But if you like what I do, please like the video. It helps me in the algorithm, helps push all of my videos up in there to get more views and hopefully help more people out with things like mental health, or trying to help people like E-Man G out here who have come afoul of some pretty horrid things in their life that they want to, set right. So one thing I would like to thank him for is that he went out of his way to clarify things in his email back and forth with me. One, for reaching out. Good on him for doing that. And two, he didn't just reach out, but he definitely put his case in black and white terms. Because there were a few things last week that we were talking about that aren't quite true and are actually worse than what we originally said. Because I tried to taper what I said last time. Because as I said, I'm not a lawyer, you know what I mean? But I tried to taper it and not be so sensationalist. But no, it turns out I was going very, very, very easy on Games Workshop last time. So rather than actually giving you my view of what E-Man G said, I thought it might be best to let E-Man G speak for himself. And so I asked him if I could use the email that he sent in my video just to read it to you so you guys can get the full picture of what's going on with his case. So, for those of you who do not know, E-Man G was a young man who makes 3D printed models, right? And he ostensibly gives them away for free. But you can go to his Patreon and give him some money if you think his work is worth it, right? Or if you think that, the supports that he does for the 3D printed models are also worth it. One thing that came up last time, which I think was very, very, very important for us to remember, is that without supports, most 3D printed models will fall apart in the 3D printer. So what E-Man G is offering here is essentially, if you want your models to work out properly, you need to go to the Patreon and pay. So there has been very, shall we say, in my opinion, fruity ways of trying to get around the law here. That's been going on, which isn't great, right? And E-Man G's never actually had truck with anything that I've said in terms of, I said, look, taking Games Workshop's IP and putting it in a 3D printer and printing it and then selling it, which is, let's be honest, it's kind of what he was doing with a Patreon on there as well, is not the brightest thing to do in the world, right? And you are asking for litigation to arrive at your door. Now, here we go. With his email, this is what he said in response to what we said on our concerns last time in our video. Now, I'm just going to start reading it from here, alright? Okay, cool. So he said, greetings. You asked about settling in the video. So this is like a few emails into our conversation. You asked about settling in the video. As in, yes, I did. So in my last video, I said, maybe, have they settled already? What would that look like, right? Because E-Man G is not a big person. He's somebody who sells things on his Patreon, so he's earning decent money from Patreon from when I last looked at it, ages ago now, right? So he's making decent money from Patreon, but he's not the kind of person that will be able to pay massive legal fees, and he's not the kind of person who's going to be able to financially take on Games Workshop without beggaring himself in the process, right? Okay, cool. So you asked about settling in the video, so I'll talk about that within the limits of what I'm allowed to mention. This is a quote from E-Man G. My attorney's recommended course of action was to try and negotiate with the claimant, Games Workshop, before the official hearing with the CCB. Something that the CCB will ask at the beginning of the discovery phase of the hearing is if one or both parties would like to settle already. And ideally, that's what I said, Northern Exile, that's what I said should happen, right? There have been multiple extensions, amended scheduling orders, requested, as the attempted negotiations keep going back and forth. like you mentioned in your video, I complied with every demand Games Workshop put up. The infringing materials were removed from where they were hosted in January, and every piece of financial information that they have demanded of me, bank accounts, assets, owned, etc., has been turned over to them. Each time, we were told that what we were offering was not enough and that we needed to offer more. Okay, let me just come to you with that, right? This is a multi-100 million-pound company. Telling a young man who's willing to settle out of court and take a slap on the wrist and say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do this again, right? Right? Publicly. This is what I said last time. Games Workshop are choosing to beggar this person and put him on the street. Okay? This is not a... We're just going up doing our legal rights. No. You're going above and beyond on your choosing to go above and beyond. This is exactly what I suspected Games Workshop of doing last time. And before I do anything else in this video, I'd like to make something perfectly clear. Games Workshop are fully capable and they have every right to defend their intellectual property. That is not what's up for debate here. I fully support Games Workshop's, right to protect what they feel they own. I respect that. That's fine. Because if you don't protect your IP, then you lose your intellectual property, right? You lose your right to protect it. You need to set a precedent in law. If somebody is coming after your IP, you need to set a precedent that you defended it in law so that when the next case comes along, they can look at that case and go, Games Workshop have already defended their IP, so it's their IP in the eyes of the law, right? If you don't defend it vigorously, you lose it. That's what intellectual property means. It's a minefield. But if you have an IP, viewer, you and me now, if me and you have a company together, right, and we are selling a product, let's say, ground marines. We're selling ground marines as a thing, right? And Games Workshop start to, muscle in on our trademark. We should and have to take them to court to defend our IP, because if we don't, then Ground Marines is free open license and anybody can use it, because you didn't exercise your right to protect your IP in the first place. That's why I believe Games Workshop have every right to protect their IP, and to be honest with you, I think E-Man-G does too, right? Cool. But no matter what he offers, they're asking for more. This seems malicious in my eyes, but let me just read on, alright? There's also the notion, carrying on the quote here, there is also the notion that they wanted $30,000 and that's the maximum that they can get from me. This figure is per claim. And I said this in the video, didn't I? If this is per claim, then this is a much bigger thing that they're asking for than the $30,000. If they were just asking for $30,000, I said to E-Man-G in my last video, mate, just pay the $30,000 and get on with your life, right? But it's not. There are 12 claims constituting 14 copyright registrations. That would come to a total of around $360,000, as they demanded the maximum amount of $30,000 for each claim. My attorney has also told me that if the respondent is found to have willfully infringed, the respondent being E-Man-G, the penalty can be even higher than the maximum of $30,000 in each claim. This would have reached, and could reach, $500,000+. $500,000 for one person to pay out. You tell me if that's fair. You tell me if that's not, going over and beyond. What E-Man-G has done here is he's taken a fingernail off Games Workshop, and Games Workshop are trying to hack off his whole fucking arm. That's what's happening here. This is why I had to consider filing for bankruptcy. I do not have that kind of money. Dude, E-Man-G, who does? Who has 500... I know you've been doing okay on Patreon, but not 500 grand's worth of okay. You know what I mean? Even with what I made through Patreon and donations, I'd effectively be stuck in wage slavery to pay this off for close to a decade in order to even begin paying off a judgment of this size. I mentioned this in the comment I left, but I did consult a separate bankruptcy lawyer as well. The potential judgment was so high that he recommended filing it if it was going to go through and the claimant wouldn't negotiate. So basically, you know, if Games Workshop aren't going to negotiate, even if you don't know whether you're going to lose the case, you should still file for bankruptcy, is what he was told. So bankruptcy lawyer literally told Iman-G, it doesn't matter if you haven't lost the case yet, and you might win it, I don't care, file for bankruptcy. Because if they're not going to negotiate, you're essentially bankrupt. Because they think that the judgment that's coming down on this guy's head is going to be $350,000 to $500,000. They have taken this guy who has infringed on their copyright, fair enough, right? And who, by his own admission on that Side Scrollers podcast, ignored some NDAs, right? Not NDAs, some cease and desist orders, right? To stop. Fair enough. That's a really silly thing to do. But they've taken a guy who's made some mistakes, and instead of just raking him through the court, making him pay his and their legal fees, and calling it a day when he says he won't do it anymore, and pays off, like, you know, whatever token amount he's going to pay off. Instead of doing that, they've tried to take him for everything. This one guy, they're trying to put him in a fucking cardboard box on the street. And that I do not stand for. We're a mental health channel here. I do not stand for that kind of shit. Again, Games Workshop have every right to protect their intellectual property. Absolutely. Absolutely. And they should, I'm sorry Iman-G, they should have taken him to court. I agree. Right? Teach the person a lesson, get a small settlement out of it, get it on record that you defended your IP and that you won a case against Iman-G, and then let it go. Do not try and put somebody on the street. This is a really, really malicious and maniacal thing to do. And all of those videos and all of those people who talk about Games Workshop like they're this big evil corporation, well, I'm sorry, this is how an evil corporation acts. He also told me, so this is Iman-G talking about the bankruptcy lawyer that he's discussing his case with, right? The bankruptcy lawyer also told me that if they did offer to settle at any point, Games Workshop, that I should take it, as it's preferable to a bankruptcy filing and ruined credit for the next 7 years. I'm an individual, which is Chapter 7 bankruptcy in the US. I've already filed the paperwork he's given me, so if they reject settlement talks, that's what I'm going to have to resort to. Neither party has agreed to a settlement as of yet, but I'm praying they accept what I've offered them. I hope this has been helpful, and I appreciated your courage, as you didn't call me a liar or a scam artist when speaking about my case. Right, okay, this is another thing that I want to go over, right? Another thing I want to go over. This guy's going through enough. Right? Calling this guy fit to burn in comments and shit like that, that's also not going to fly with me. People make mistakes in life. And on that, Iman-G, I know you're listening, my friend, right? And I know you're selling models from Helldivers 2. Please, for the love of God, make sure you either have permission to use those or you take them down. For the love of God, man. Don't get it, because Sony are worse. Sony are worse than Games Workshop. Do not poke the bear again. Alright, that's all I'm going to say about that. You seem like a nice bloke. So make sure you've got your eggs in a row there. Please. Don't do this again. Okay? Going after this guy and calling him fit to burn is not helpful. Iman-G has paid for his mistakes. Why? Because the process is the punishment. This is a guy who from January of this year for 7 months has gone through hell. He's had his whole life turned upside down and could be facing the very real threat of bankruptcy. Willful bankruptcy too, by the way. This is a company who has the choice to not do this, and they're going to do it anyway. Why? Why? Their point has been made. Nobody wants to touch Games Workshop. Nobody. Not animators, not cosplayers. And you can say cosplayers do it all the time as much as you want. They do it at official Games Workshop things, by the way, number one, right? In fact, that's my only point I want to make there, right? Just because you've seen a cosplayer every once in a while wearing 40k doesn't mean it shouldn't be far more popular than what it is. And it should. There should be a cavalcade of cosplay to do with 40k and Warhammer, right? So animators, cosplayers, writers, designers, artists, they all steer fucking clear of 40k. Why? Because of this kind of bullshit. So you've made your point, Games Workshop. It's your sandbox, and nobody else is allowed to play in it. We get it. No problem. We get it. Message received. Okay? And also, here's the other thing. And, again, I want to be as balanced as I can, but when getting information such as this, it's very hard to do that, because it's so out there. But what I want to say is, Games Workshop, again, have every right to protect their legal property. That is true. That is just unequivocal. That is true. That's fine, right? And in all case in point, this may just be the legal department going into overdrive and doing what it's trained to do. And that's take the other person for everything in any way, shape, or form. What you need to do here, Games Workshop, is read the room. You've made your point. You've won your case. Right? You've made your point. Drop it. Drop it. Or accept whatever settlement E-Man-G puts forward. Accept it. Accept it. Take the win. Have it on record that you defended your IP and that you won. And move on. It will be there in the case file that E-Man-G admitted all wrongdoing and paid out. So accept it. Whatever he's offered you, please accept it. Do not take this man for everything. Do not put him on the fucking street in a cardboard box. What does that get you but negative publicity that's worth far more than the money you're going to get? Do you really need that 500 grand? Seriously? I don't think you do. Not when you are £150 million in the green year on year. It's not worth it. Back the fuck off. Okay? I'm serious. This is ridiculous. The guy's done wrong. Again, I'm going to end the video in a sec. The guy has done wrong. He admits he's done wrong, and I can see he's done wrong. And by the way, don't ignore takedown notices from big corporations. Don't do that. Don't do that. Take them fucking seriously and stop what you're doing. Or at least take a big step back and say, am I in the right here or am I in the wrong here? If you're even got a smidgen of doubt, go to your lawyer and cease all production in the meantime. Be very, very careful. And E-Man-G, I will repeat what I just said before. You're making Helldivers 2 sculpts. Please, for the love of God, make sure you have permission to do shit like that, alright? I don't want to be covering this again when you're getting sued again. Because that will be where we are. And I probably won't even cover it. I'm like, nah, I'm just not covering this, sorry. You know, because this should be a hell of a shot across the bow. I sincerely hope, E-Man-G, I sincerely hope that Games Workshop take your settlement, right? And you can move on with your life. And 3D print some awesome models. Because 3D printing is really, really, really important to the ecosystem of the hobby going forward, whether Games Workshop want to admit that or not. So I really hope this works out for you, and I really hope that they take the settlement. But my God, like, Games Workshop, just read the room, man. You've made your point. You've won your case. You know, take yes for an answer. If you put this guy on the street or you put this guy into bankruptcy, that's your choice. Games Workshop, you made that choice. Do not hide behind litigation and say, well, that's the law. No, you made that fucking choice. You had a settlement given to you that you could have accepted and let this guy carry on with his life and made your point. Right? You put everybody into line here. That's fine. You've made your point. Take the settlement and move on. If you don't take the settlement, then that is willful. You are now trying to put this guy on the street. You're trying to put this guy into bankruptcy. That's the difference here. I fully support your right to protect your IP. I do. And you've done that. You know, mission accomplished. You've won. Now go away and leave this man alone. When big corporations start going after small people like this is when you have to take things with an extreme case of scrutiny. Because this is somebody very big picking on somebody very small. And yes, Iman G's done wrong. That is not what is up for debate here. Games Workshop's response is what is up for debate. Iman G said he's done wrong. He said he'll pay a settlement. He said he'll never do it again. And all of that is on record. That he can be taken to court over if he doesn't do it, right? So once that's the case, back off. Accept what you've got and move on, Games Workshop. The bad publicity isn't worth it. But to be honest with you, they've shown in the past that they don't give a shit about bad publicity. They don't give a shit about their fans. They don't give a shit about what anybody thinks about them, as long as they make their ends. That's all they give a shit about. So let's see. Iman G, stay in touch, man. And I want to stay on top of the case. I won't do another video unless, you know, something really mental happens. So I think we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for reaching out to me, man. It meant a lot to me that you did that and that we got some clarity about what's going on. And that it's even worse than what we first thought and what it seemed like. I've tried to be balanced throughout this entire thing and make sure I take everybody's interests in and I give my solid opinion on what's going on with the information that's in the public forum. So I love you all a long time. I will speak to you tomorrow for some more Hobby Nightmares, and hopefully for this one man, Iman G, the Hobby Nightmare is about to come to an end finally. Alright? I love you all. I'll speak to you soon. Have a good one. Bye now.